Hello and welcome to another episode of the Silk and Steel podcast. I'm your host, Carl Zha. 4 months ago, I had a conversation with AI expert TP Huang on the AI race between US and China. This conversation was originally released as an audio podcast on Silk and Steel podcast for my Patreon subscriber. Now I'm making it available on YouTube. Take a look. Today we have back our returning guest, AI expert TP Huang, to give us a AI update and what is going on in China in the tech space. Welcome back to the show, TP.
Glad to be back, Carl. Really exciting times.
A very exciting time. Last time I have you back, I think it was December last year. You said the China's rare earth export control is gonna real cripple U.S. Industries. It took them 6 months to notice, but finally now everybody is talking about it. Well, I guess it's because originally the export control was only on gallium, germanium, and few metals, and then it got expanded after Trump's Liberation Day tariff announcement.
Yeah, I think also there was a lot of transshipment going on. But I guess the amount of the newly added metals, the amount of they need is so much that it's not easily transshipable. So the auto industry noticed pretty quickly.
Yes, because every car, every car needs those heat-resistant magnets. For people who don't know, because they need the magnets in the car motor, because the motor generates a lot of heat, and the heat demagnetize magnets. But with these critical minerals, magnets, they're heat resistant. This is why it goes into every cars. So the reason I have you back is because we haven't talked for a while. Last time I think we talked was February, right after the DeepSeek a moment, and now it's like 4-5 months later, and that's like a lifetime in AI development cycle. And I remember distinctively you mentioned when I asked you, what do you think about AGI, artificial generative intelligence? Are we ever gonna get there? You said it's possible. We're possibly just 1 or 2 years away. Do you still stand by that?
It's hard to say. So the way I look at it is like the models themselves keep getting more useful, and they're not like, I don't think they have intuition at the moment, really, but they're getting there, and I think that it is possible over the next year or two, we're gonna get something that's not real AGI, but appears to be AGI to us. Like it appears like if you ask them anything, they can probably do most of the stuff, 99% of the stuff that normal humans can't do. But you still need to be there's still value for for people to be at the other end, to know how to use the models correctly. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I heard from people who use AI to do coding, and they basically say, yeah, you definitely need a pair of human eyes to make sure to correct all the mistakes that AI is making in the coding. But what the AI did, it just make the process of coding easier, because you take out all the groundwork, and then you can just act as a supervisor to correct the mistakes, to proofreading, but you still need a human proofreader.
Yeah, actually, that's how I use it right now. In fact, I do use it quite a bit. I use DeepSeek, I use ChatGPT sometimes to do, and I use like Cursor to program. And so it's actually helped my productivity quite a bit. For a programmer, you'll notice that if you know how to use it correctly, it's pretty helpful. But obviously, what we're seeing right now is that AI is actually replacing some of the need for entry-level programmers. So you're seeing a lot of layoffs right now in Microsoft. Meta and possibly Google, but I think Microsoft and Meta are the main ones.
Speaking of Meta, Meta just recently they spent $15 billion to acquire Scale AI, led by Alexander Wang, the guy who basically run a digital sweatshop, like we talked about last time. This guy basically hired these Filipinos and Kenyans and underpaying them and have them label data for the big AI company. Now, why did Zuckerberg do that? Why did he spend $15 million for Scale AI?
Well, I think mainly because Zuckerberg is really desperate, and he. So you gotta understand the Silicon Valley types. They're very insulated in their bubble. The only world that they see is in the Silicon Valley bubble. So Zuckerberg, when he looked at the landscape like 2 or 3 years ago, he's like, "Oh, OpenAI is going not open anymore, and Google is not open, and Cloud is Anthropic is not open also. So I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make my thing open source, so everyone that doesn't trust their data going through Sam Altman is gonna use my Llama models." And then what happened? In the past year, both Qwen and DeepSeek, and now even Kimi, have surpassed Llama models, and he's very desperate to catch up. So, and he is just throwing money, like, because Meta has a lot of money, so he's just throwing money out there, and he's throwing money on investing chips. He's throwing money on investing talent, hoping that he can catch up and be state of the art, basically, because he doesn't want to lose this AI race either. And it's obvious that Meta is the one trailing everyone else right now.
So he's just desperate and he's just grasping at straws. But how is Scale AI going to help him? I mean, my understanding of Scale AI, it's not really an AI company. I mean, it's basically they're doing the kind of the groundwork for the other AI companies, right? By data labeling.
Yeah, the entire thing is very confusing to me. Like some of his effort in paying like $100 million to recruit ethnic Chinese people from from OpenAI, that made a lot of sense, right? Like you need as many talent as possible, and Alexander Wang is definitely not a talent. He's just talker. But I think like in America, sometimes it's just about talking a big game. This is why this country is going to shit, because we reward people for talking a big game and can't back it up.
That's
So
sadly true. So I wanted to one reason I wanted to bring you back to the show is to talk about the latest development in China. So what has changed in the last 6 months after DeepSeek emerged as like the big shock into the.
I think in general, uh, the Chinese AI models were always were pretty good by middle of last year already, but the Silicon Valley crowd hasn't caught on to it yet, so there wasn't this hype behind all that. The Qwen models, when they came out, were really good. Like they were very good for open source, and they were already surpassing Llama models by that point. And then the Chinese public also did not appreciate how good the Chinese models were. And the reason that Chinese models were behind weren't really because they were lacking computing power. It was because they just didn't go down this stretch. So like OpenAI released ChatGPT. It was only then that the Chinese AI labs and big tech decided we need to catch up to OpenAI. So like the American tech firms had like a 2 or 3 years advantage in the race, basically. So when DeepSeek came out, it was only then that Chinese public caught on to how good the domestic AI model was. And it's kind of sad that like Chinese people need outsiders to validate their own progress. But that's just been like a story of our culture for many years now. So what happened is when this came to China, DeepSeek came to China, it blew up basically over Chinese New Year's, right? And then we start seeing everyone incorporating the reasoning models, and people start finding out the reasoning models were really good. So then they start putting it into all their apps everywhere. And it was only at that time did we realize how much compute Chinese firms really had. Because we had the sanctions since 2022, so people believed that they weren't getting these chips. And it was only at that time all these news came out about just how much transshipment was happening in the AI chips, that China was getting them from Malaysia, Singapore, and I don't know, Thailand, Taiwan, like all these Asian countries, right? And it was shown like Nvidia was making as much revenue out of like Asian regions where you think most of the chips are going to China from that, as they were making more money from that than America itself. And it was also at this point I really started tracking the data center build up in China, and I realized that the data centers were having a whole lot more computation power than I was expecting personally. And this is also um, the really eye-opening moment for me was when Tencent opened up their AI app Yuanbao, and it was from day one. It was offering up, you know, service of DeepSeek reasoning models to everyone. And you can think of like Tencent has, almost the entire Chinese population using it. So if they open this up in their AI app, there's gonna be a lot of users. And what I heard was actually this they had enough bandwidth to handle 8 million requests at the same time. I mean, can you imagine an American one having that? Like it's crazy amount of bandwidth, right? So um this told me that the Chinese big tech had a lot more AI chips than we thought. They were advancing quickly, and also um, DeepSeek was driving all the AI labs in China to move a lot faster. So we have the same Nejuan, like we saw with EVs and solar panels and everything else. And that was also when we saw that renewed commitment by ByteDance, Alibaba making announcements on how much investment they're going to put into AI chips, and also Tencent. So basically, we have like 3 or 4 major players in China and a couple up and comers making really huge investment into AI. I mean, in the end, it's hard to say who the winners will be, but I would say that there's quite a few very competitive Chinese models. And for me, I personally love using Qwen, because Qwen models, you can run them on your computer, you can run them on your edge devices, you can run them on your little AI robots if you want. And the Qwen 2.5 and all the Qwen multimodal models are state of the art. Like they're the best for what you can use them for, right? So if you have a let's say you're trying to make like a little AI robot in your home to play with your kids, and you don't want that information to go to OpenAI, then you want all the stuff to be handled by the AI robot. Qwen is like the ideal model for that, because it can handle voice and the text at the same time, and it has different size models so that you can fit it according to the needs that you have. So what's happening underneath is that a lot of people, if you stay in America, people in America still thinks America is ahead, but that's only because they only focus on chatbots. What they don't realize is that AI development, China is very focused on the product-driven part of it, and there is like right now a huge gap between what the Chinese industries are making in terms of AI robots versus what American companies are making. if that makes sense. I know this because I personally worked on a project like this recently. And I was on call with, so we had a couple Americans on our side, and because we needed to do some kind of AI robots, so I was on call with this factory in Shenzhen. And then they had their one sales lady talking to us because the sales lady was we're trying to access this Chinese chip to put on our AI robots because the Chinese chips are good enough and they're cheap, right? You don't want to buy NVIDIA because they're so expensive. So 15 minutes into this call, I realized America was cooked because this sales lady, know more about how to make electronics board and the, the battery and the heat dissipation, heat management stuff that all the smart engineers that we have in America. And that was when I looked at myself. I was like, America's really in trouble if you hear all these big talking about Silicon Valley about deploying AI to robots. They don't even know how to make a board. They don't know that they don't have the models needed for the board. Nobody even. I bet the people in Silicon Valley never have to deal with what the battery life is for products that you need to use, or how to do it so that uh, your AI robot doesn't burn up from too much heating. So what we did was we actually tried different AI inference edge AI chips from different companies. So what we found was that NVIDIA was the easiest to set up, obviously, because everything was written for it, but they were charging a ridiculous amount of money. And then we also tried Qualcomm, MediaTek, and two mainland Chinese companies, Rockchip and Xera. And we found out that the Rockchip and Xera, they were pretty affordable, but more importantly, they had very good software support for the AI portion of it. So when you're running the models, you can use the NPU, so the AI processing unit, to speed up the process of generating results. Then we tried Qualcomm and MediaTek. So MediaTek is a Taiwanese company, and Qualcomm, is in San Diego. And because we thought, like if we want to bring the product to America, we need to have like a non-mainland option, right? And then we just found the software support from MediaTek and Qualcomm to be so lacking. Like their NPU doesn't support the functionality, the operations needed for some of the most widely used models like Qwen models, or stuff like conversion text to speech and then speech to text. So you can't actually use these chips because their NPU is effectively useless because of this. So this is what a lot of people don't realize. One, if you want to have a working AI model, you have to use the Chinese. You have to use the models themselves have to be Chinese. Where you make them, the electronics board and stuff like that has to be China, because that's where the entire supply chain is. That's how the entire place where people know how to like put stuff in electronics, put the RAMs in there, put the audio things in there, hook it up to the battery, and how to do heat dissipation, maybe put like a fan in there, and how to deal with the battery life, things like that. All the people that know how to do that are in Shenzhen right now. And then after that, the chip, which people would normally think as something that China is behind the West in, is actually not a problem in this case, because the one company that came out with the stuff first which is Rockchip, they have the best software support out there outside of NVIDIA. And then I would get on these calls with the Chinese factories and ask them, like, basically, are there competitors to us in this space? And they're like, yeah, plenty. We have so many people interested in doing this stuff here. And I'm pretty sure there are many people doing this in America, I can tell you that. Talk to our Indonesian factory, they're like, Yeah, you should speed it up a little bit because there's Chinese companies trying to do the exact same thing, do this product, getting it assembled in Indonesia, get the electronics board done in China, do the software in China, then get assembled in Indonesia and ship it to America. It's like, okay, yeah. So that's kind of the just a lay of the land. Basically, if you want to get any kind of electronics done, I found out that the hard way, if you want to get any kind of electronics done with AI, you need to be in Shenzhen for about 3 or 4 months.
Now the question, my next question is: did you guys have this discussion before or after the the tariff liberation day announcement?
Oh, definitely after.
Oh,
Definitely after.
really? Really? So
Yeah,
even
because
after, whatever 55% tariff, whatever, it would still make sense to get the Chinese hardware?
I mean, you just can't be done in America. Like, there's no expertise in doing this, right? Like, where am I gonna find a guy that knows how to put the design and board together and put it together? Like, there's no factory in America doing that kind of stuff. We had some problem with, or just to give people an idea of like how much China dominates the electrical board space, what they call single board computers. In the Western country, there's this thing called Raspberry Pi. I don't know if you used it, but it's like designed in UK and made in UK slash Japan slash China, whatever. In China, they have orange pie, they have banana pie, they have Cypede, and I'm pretty sure they have another pie also. I can't remember now. But there's like for every like Western option outside of China, there's like about 5 or 6 inside China itself. And you don't even know about them until you go to like AliExpress and just look up like sports that support this chip, and they all know what they're doing. So, and no matter where the headquarter of the chip, no matter where the headquarter of the chip design company is, even in China, all the factories are in Shenzhen.
That's amazing. We rarely hear about this in the mainstream media because I just recall, like, just not that long ago, like I think a month ago, there was an article coming out either in Wall Street Journal or New York Times that says, oh, the Chinese are good at the assembling electronic stuff because the Chinese women, they have small hands. I mean, like, I can't believe I read that in like the paper of the records. But it's, oh my, anyway. So enough about the stupidity of the legacy
Yeah,
media.
like America is undefeated in copium, completely undefeated in that. Okay, and it's written by a bunch of liberal arts majors that aren't into technology, that don't have to deal with this stuff, right? Honestly, if unless you try to do this, unless you try to produce this, it is actually very hard to know what the lay of the land is. Like, I did not realize Qwen was so much better than Llama before I started this. I didn't even know Rockchip was so big. They're like an industry standard. They're like the de facto single board computer standard because there's so much better support for them software wise than others. I didn't know ESP32 was like the de facto industry standard before this, right? Like, there are just all these things that, because the entire ecosystem is inside China, how to make a board, the expertise behind that is just not known. People don't know like how much uh, the electronics industry is just congregated there. I think there was a recently I would say a contact friend of mine, Mosen Hart. He was returning to Shenzhen because his toy business he does a lot of stuff there, and he was saying that basically if you want to do electronics, you have to be in Shenzhen. Even if you're designing stuff in somewhere in middle of America, if you want to get the shit done, if you want to get it produced, you have to be in Shenzhen because the expertise there is just unparalleled elsewhere. Like, where in America are you gonna find uh, like several factories where people know how to source different chips, source different batteries, source boards, the audio components, the fans, and assemble them together at a manageable cost. Like, I didn't know how much any of these stuff cost before, right? But the people in Shenzhen, they all know it.
But the argument of the Silicon Valley tech bro is that okay, yeah, sure, China dominating hardware, but that doesn't matter because we can just concentrate on the design of the software, right? And that's as long as we get the AGI out of the door first, we're gonna win. What do you say to that?
So it depends. I think there is applications that doesn't require hardware, right? Like just uh, right now, the OpenAI reasoning models just by themselves are pretty useful for if you want to do research reports, if you want to have like a summary of things, if you want to plan out vacations, and or even if you have like a programming question that you have for it, and it can do that for you. But it's one of those things where once America gets to something that looks like AGI, China will get there maybe at worst like 6 months later, right? And nothing is going to happen in the 6 months that's going to say, oh, China's done. So the there's no, in terms of computational resources, uh, it seems like China's doing pretty well there. In terms of energy resources, China has no issue with supplying power to the data centers, where America it's a huge issue. And there's not just data center, not just the power itself, but also all the other part of the supply chain that goes into the data center. A lot of electrical stuff that America relies on the rest of the world to build its data centers. So, but aside from stuff like this, there are a lot of areas like material science, um, biotech, auto manufacturing, uh, aero design, and things like that, where we're already seeing Chinese industry really using AI. Like for example, EVs. Um, Companies in China are able to churn out models in like a year and a half because the process got sped up by the usage of AI in designing the cars. And whereas America and Western countries, it still has much longer development cycles because of that. So there is that. And I think AI robots and any kind of AI robotic stuff is a huge industry in the future. And it's very hard for people in America to just do software and wait for like the partners in Shenzhen to do the hardware part of it, because one, you're not in the same time zone, you're not next to them. So just in terms of getting help and things like that, you can't iterate product as quickly when you're not next to the supply chain.
Fair.
And the reason for this is pretty obvious, right? Like if I'm doing product development and I need someone from Shenzhen, I need to be on the phone every night at like 10 o'clock. And if you have a family, that's a real problem. So it's very hard to iterate your product at the same speed as a team in China that can speak the same language, that can try it out, that has more access to a lot of data also, and can get the cost down because they don't have to go through Indonesia and then ship the product over here to America, right? So it's a real thing, okay? This is a real thing.
That's
Indonesia,
thanks
not
to the
Vietnam, is like,
tariff, right? That's thanks to
yeah,
Trump's tariff, right? Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
And by the way, the Indonesian factories, they're running running very hot right now. So, like it's not like they have an infinite capacity that can just get this stuff through. Trump is probably gonna have to make the tariffs 500% in order for the manufacturing to of that stuff to come back to America, probably.
Well, I mean, the problem with the tariff is, tariff could work if it's paired with the industrial policy, but Trump administration think you can you can just do tariff and everything will magically resolve itself, but that's not how it works. Traditionally, tariff has been paired with industrial policy to actually target a specific segment of manufacturing. You know, tariff works if you actually have manufacturing, but right now, what Trump is actually doing is creating a whole lot of uncertainty in the market, and one thing the business really hate is uncertainty. Talk to me about Kimi, because this is a new development, right? Comments on our last show's video, people were saying, "Oh, Kimi is so good; it's so much better than DeepSeek." I'm just hearing about Kimi right now. This is a new language model that just came out of China.
Yeah, like they've been like kind of under the radar AI lab in China for a while now, and I think they actually came up with the last model they came up was actually pretty good, and there was a lot of positive reviews of their model from the AI community here in America, just because they came out with good papers. But DeepSeek took all the sucked all the attention away because it got hyped up by Silicon Valley, right? And
Yeah.
they kind of deserved it. They're pretty smart guys and stuff like that. But it just shows like in China itself, and there are multiple AI labs who are doing great things. And the Kimi model that came out is actually, I haven't personally tried it myself, but it's like not a reasoning model. So it's like, and it's better than the most recent DeepSeek V3 model, which was the best Chinese open source like non-reasoning model up to that point. And so I think it'll be interesting to see what happens. Like I still need to test it out. People say it's really good with coding and things like that, and possibly it could be really good for deep research. But the Chinese labs, they really have to do something to stand out because there's so many good Chinese labs right now. Like OpenAI, a couple of weeks ago, they were spreading alarm about Zhipu.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't know exactly how the Chinese word. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but yeah. So there's like multiple of them that are really good, and they have access to the data. They have enough compute power right now, from what I can tell, and they're all running on much lower cost basis than American competitors because they're not like paying $100 million for the top talents in China. So
That is so crazy, man. I mean, that's like when I find out that the compensation package they're offering. Well, that's just Zach, right? That's
you're in the wrong industry.
Seriously, right? I mean, but the 100 million compensation package that's just from Zuckerberg, right? Or is there more?
I think that I think that's like a Zuckerberg madness. We'll
Yeah.
see like what the top salaries other companies start offering, but like I'm sure like quite a few people are getting at least several millions a year, but 100 million is still
Right. That's not.
it's still like kind of crazy actually to think about. That's like 10 times more than probably what DeepSeek has spent during the entire lifetime of the firm or something.
Oh, yeah, and
Yeah, I just wonder when this entire stuff is gonna blow up because there's the economics behind it is just not there at the moment. Unless you get into the hard product of it. They were saying all this time about like how they're gonna cure cancer and things like that from large language models, but you still you still need the firms to use it to help you to this. That only speeds up product development.
right.
AI helps you, but like there still need people paying for these things at the end. And there's just a lot of money going in, and Nvidia is making a whole lot of money, but I haven't seen a huge pickup in like usage from call centers or whatever.
I was just gonna ask, how is Nvidia now the most valued company in the world when they're being cut off on like one of their biggest market, China? Is it all due to transshipment, or because it's the AI bubble in United States?
I think it's a combination of that. I think the Chinese um, transshipment thing is going to continue for a while longer. And also, I think people don't realize that this demand for computation just can't keep growing at this pace. People think that a lot of investors seem to think you just keep buying into it because this tree would just keep growing exponentially. But if you look at the actual demand for this from these third-party cloud providers, whether it's also the hyperscalers, they only need so much chips. And there's just I just don't see the it has to be like when you have someone on the upstream charging that much money, the revenue has to be generated on the downstream for it to be worth it eventually, right?
Hmm.
There's just a lot of money going, a lot of hype money going in, and when are they going to generate the results? And at some point, I do think Huawei is going to take almost all the market share inside China once their software part of it gets sorted out. So the issue with Huawei right now is they the software support isn't as good as NVIDIA because a lot of the libraries, a lot of the support were designed with CUDA in mind. They're just things you can run on CUDA. Everyone supports CUDA when they write these Python libraries for AI inference, right? So until Huawei gets all the software part of it sorted out, there's always like a disadvantage in using Ascend chips versus CUDA chips. So Huawei has to sort this out. So at some point, Chinese firms stops using NVIDIA chips as much, and at the same time, it's expanding all these like data centers globally, where they were gonna use the full like Chinese Huawei stack of AI solutions, and I think a lot of the global South countries are going to use that and use the Chinese technology instead of the more expensive NVIDIA technology.
Speaking of that, um, recently there's Germany just pushed for the ban of DeepSeek, right?
Yeah, I I mean, a lot of these things I don't think really matters all that much. Um, I think at the end of the day, um, there's the app component of it, and there's the API component of it, and there's the application component of it. And it is possible that that just due to national security fears or whatever, the American apps will for AI, at least in Western countries, will always be dominant because there's the entire TikTok, story behind that. Like, there's always going to be national security fear mongering going on. But uh, I think what's going to happen is if your industry doesn't use AI in these countries, you're going to fall behind. And what we're seeing is outside of China and US, AI adoption isn't at the same level, I would say. So the industries that are in these countries are already falling behind. And they have to make a decision at some point on whether they use the closed source American model versus the open source Chinese model, where they have full control over it, and I feel like a lot of countries will probably end up picking the closed source model just because they have they political reason for more for geopolitical reasons than anything else, right? So but there's still pretty large market out there for the Chinese models just because inherently developers like to work with open source models,
Mm. Fair,
right?
fair.
And I think all the future AI robots, as I said earlier in the show, are going to be made in China with most likely Chinese AI models. That's my opinion on this matter.
Was the temporary Trump ban on CUDA and other AI design software to China, did that have an impact?
I think probably not because the EDAs once you have your design finalized and sent to the foundries, they can just produce the chips. They don't really need additional permissioning to do those. But if you're trying to design new chips and you don't have the EDAs, then it becomes a problem for you. So I think it was an annoyance, but not for the AI. Like it doesn't, like Huawei would have already finished its design of that cent, and it's all manufactured in China anyways. And they also you do have EDAs for 7 nanometer processes inside China. The problem was a lot of the fabs inside China are still using American EDAs because um, it's just there's always a switching cost when you go from your current software and hardware to a new software hardware, right? So people don't necessarily do it until they have to do it. So I think there's going to be a greater shift away from American EDAs as a result of this. Because I think like shifting software is still easier than shifting hardware.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But I mean, like, I guess what I meant was, did that temporary ban light a fire under the Chinese companies in their decision to possibly switch over to Huawei software? You know.
It's hard to say. So um, you would think it would, but I think it's probably going to take another year or so for us to really tell how much of a shift that is,
Hmm.
because we would end up seeing what normally happens is this. Um, these companies, they have their earnings call,
Hmm.
and then the earnings call, they will ask them questions about different regions, and then they will say like, oh, we saw this year that this we suddenly start seeing our Chinese revenue dropping because we believe they found like a local supplier
Hmm.
for it, and that's happening pretty gradually right now, pretty gradually. A lot of the American equipment makers and Japanese ones are still making a lot of their revenues in China, but for semiconductor. But the thing is, it's because Chinese market is growing so fast that the domestic suppliers just can't. They can expand 40-50% a year, and there's still a huge market.
Hmm.
So you're seeing like I don't know if you've seen it in the recent months. There was a side carrier. They're like basically um, they're one of the largest semiconductor manufacturing equipment makers in China now, and they didn't really even advertise their product until like to globally until a few months ago, but a lot of the Chinese fabs were already using them, and there's a lot of players like that inside China, but it still takes time for the entire industry to develop, right? We want them to like grow overnight, but you can't go from 1 billion revenue to 100 billion revenue like in a year. Like it just takes time to grow.
That's fair. That's fair. Outside of the AI space, what is going on in the Chinese tech space? What other new development in the Chinese tech space that we should be aware of?
Um, so I want to talk a little bit about just there's some misconceptions about rare earth in general.
Okay.
People think rare earth is just like digging stuff out of the ground.
Yep.
So there's what people don't realize is China is actually a huge net importer of rare earths. But what it does is it exports rare earth magnets. It stopped basically stopped exporting the raw rare earths, and it's also stopping exporting refined rare earth, which hasn't been the case until recently. Now all its export going out are rare earth magnets. So China's basically saying to them, you give us your raw rare earths, and we make we're moving up the value chain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is a pattern that China has executed across wide variety of critical minerals. And by doing this, it's moving up the material science supply chain, right? Where in the last, I would say 20 years, America has shifted away from hard sciences and manufacturing to just software and design. China has really spent a lot of R&D into this so that its biotech got really good, its chemistry got really good, and its mechanical engineering got really good. And we're seeing the results because it is now able to lead globally. Because I see rare earths as material science in certain part of material science, and in other areas, it's also catching up to globally. And the result of that is you're going to see huge improvements in Chinese military versus what you see in America, because a lot of the development in aerospace and industries like that require the most advanced material science. Um, in some cases like rare earths. In other cases, it's carbon fiber composite, and there's other kind of synthetic fibers that China's getting increasingly really good at. And the key point is that China has all this supply chain, so it's had this effect where um, the 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 downstream industries, because they have this supply chain really close to the downstream producers, you see these rapid iteration in product development across many mechanical engineering or chemical engineering type of industries. And those are basically stuff like aerospace, rockets, and things like that. So areas that we used to think Chinese industry is behind in, we're gonna see them really leap ahead in the next 5 or 10 years, right? And recently I posted basically a picture of the drones that China was making 10 years ago versus what they're making now. 10 years ago, their drones, currently their most recent like large drone looks like basically a more stealthy and larger version of B2.
Mm-hmm.
10 years ago, their drones didn't have they're very limited in their range. They're very limited in their stealth, and they were very limited in the kind of weapons they could carry. And all of that is just due to the fact that once you have this material science supply chain domestically, and you got really good at the electrical part of things, you get really good at the mechanical part of things, and then you can iterate through the engineering cycle really quickly. And I don't think people outside of the China really realize that yet.
China's export control on rare earth, is that still on against U.S. defense industries? Is there? So I understand China extended licenses for U.S. car makers. They granted 6-month export license to those U.S. export. But what about Lockheed Martin? They still need Sumerian cobalt magnets for their F-35 and missiles, right?
Yeah, I think that part of things we will um, all the articles we read show that they have not opened up export licenses for those things.
Mhm.
Maybe they're looking to trade that for certain reduction in U.S. Export controls of the semi equipment. But if I was China, I would just leave that as is and just try to make the equipment, develop the equipment myself, right? And because it would take many more years for America to develop like same level as rare earth magnets as China has right now, because um, you know once you get the rare earth magnets produced, there's still different degrees on the performance level. People would never say a 90 nanometer chip is as good as a 3 nanometer chip. Yet people think that rare earth magnets are all the same. But clearly, if you have a higher purity rare earth alloy and then convert it to like a really well done magnet, it's going to be significantly higher performing in terms of um, able to operate at a higher temperature range and operate under like higher vibration than something that was developed with lower purity level and designed to like a less impactful magnets, for example. So in the future, you might get into a case where China still sells magnets, but you would only sell the lower end stuff globally.
So even if U.S. defense industry can somehow get like transshipment of the magnets that's designed for export to say car industry, it would not be the same grade magnets that we need for military applications, right? That's what you're saying.
Yeah, like it would be very obvious something like samarium, right? That
Hmm.
it's pretty much only for, based on what I read, it's only for military industry. There's just no reason for China to export it to like some automaker somewhere.
Makes sense.
And I think it's also very short-sighted if a company that actually needs rare earth magnets to get it and then give it to the defense contractors.
Yeah.
I do wonder like what's gonna happen to a company like Boeing, like they probably need rare earth magnets for their civilian products,
Yeah.
but they also have the huge military program, right? Like those are the kind of things we don't really know, like how tightly China is actually controlling the export licenses.
Mm, interesting. Interesting. So, yeah, I mean, United States have been aware of the rare earth dependency on China since 2009. There was like congressional report back in 2009 screaming that we need to develop domestic supply chain for rare earth because the over dependency on China is dangerous. But now it's what 2025, so it's more than a decade later. 16 years later, they still haven't done anything. So I don't expect U.S. will pick up this rare earth production and rare earth refining capability anytime soon. At least not within 10 years. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's very hard to see how that could happen, right? But um, I would say that what's more likely to happen is you end up with a situation where America does get some, magnet production that are of lower quality, let's just
Mm,
say, domestically. And China keeps the higher end stuff for itself, which we can use for like, I don't know, aerospace, hypersonic missiles, or things like that.
right. Right. So that will have some serious implications for Pentagon's plans to contain China. Anything else you like to cover in terms of any uh, new development in Chinese tech thing?
Yeah, I think just generally AI robotics is going to be huge going forward. I think that we're already seeing the humanoid robots really making the Chinese factories. We're seeing like application of different kind of small to large AI robots being used for different purposes. And part of the reason is just like the Chinese blue collar workforce is declining every year. So it needs greater automation. And in terms of AI, I think it would be very interesting to see like when DeepSeek comes out with V4, which is a non-reasoning model, and R2, which is the reasoning model, because everyone expects R2 to be really great.
Yeah.
So we're kind of all waiting for it because the entire open source community actually likes open source model regardless of which country it comes from.
Well, I'm glad we have you to give us an update because right now, just recently I saw a tweet from Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert cartoon. He tweeted, it's like, oh, the coming of robotics and automation will totally destroy China's advantage in manufacturing because they will lose their edge in cheap labor. I'm like, what do you think is going on? China leads the world in the robotic automation. China has more manufacturing robots than all the rest of the world combined. Where is this guy getting his information? And Scott Adams is not some ignoramus from like I don't know, like he's like part of the educated US elite, right? Yet this is kind of outdated view they hold about tech and about China. So yeah, so I'm glad that I have you to set the record straight. And we're at a 1 hour mark and we didn't even talk about stuff like Chinese EV development and stuff like that. But I hope to have you back to talk about that next time.
Yeah, I think that's also very interesting. But like this entire robotics thing, I only found out in the past few months, and I think very few people understand this.
Yeah.
So
Well, thank you, TP again for coming to my show. If people want to, find you and where can they find you?
they can find me on X or Twitter as TP Huang, and they can also find me on Substacks as TP Huang.
Okay, I'll have those links. I'll have those links.
Yeah, I'm pretty consistent with my name everywhere. So.
I'll have those links in the description below, and people can check it out. And please subscribe. TP is, I consider, one of the premier expert on Chinese tech, AI, and you name it. Thank you again, TP, for coming, and thanks to everyone for listening.
Thanks, Carl.
Hello, my friends. I'm Carl Zha, and you're watching Silk and Steel Podcast. Leave your comments below on what you think about this content and what would you like to see more on my channel. Thank you for watching.